From Boss Track, it's Her Hype Squad, a show about amazing women who've made incredible strides as leaders in their industry. They're here to support you and your leadership growth, to encourage you and hype you up as part of your Hype Squad. Hi, I'm Michelle Harris, and on the show today, we talk with Samantha Burmeister, founder and lead copywriter at Nomad Copy Agency, about developing your personal brand as a leader. We talk about how copy fits with personal branding, how leaders in a corporate environment use personal branding, and how to stay authentic to who you are when creating your brand. Before we jump into our discussion, a little bit about Samantha. Sam is the founder and lead copywriter at Nomad Copy Agency. At Nomad Copy, every business they write for receives bespoke copy to help them turn their sales process into a hands-off, high-conversion experience. Sam has worked on dozens of online service provider launches, many of which earned the client 6 figures or more. Ultimately, her goal is to empower the entrepreneurs she works with to sell more, simply, so they can focus on designing and living the life of their dreams. So without further delay, let's jump into our discussion with Sam. So, hi, Samantha. I want to welcome you to our call here.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I know that you are a copywriter, and our audience here is business leaders. And I know one of the questions might be why are we featuring a copywriter with business leaders? But I'm so excited to have you on because this idea of personal branding is just so important to our listeners. And I'd love to kind of have you explain to us, like, what is personal branding?
Yeah. So I always say in the simplest terms that personal branding is your vibe. It is your reputation before people know you. I think a lot of people think of branding and they think of a logo or something, or maybe package design, something like that. But when we bring it into a personal level, it's what do people think of when they think of you?
And what is the benefit? Like, what is the benefit to developing a personal brand and kind of thinking at it from our audience perspective, from a business perspective? What is the benefit to them to developing that?
Yeah, the benefit is consistency. If your reputation precedes you, you want to show up very consistently throughout your career, throughout your business, throughout your company. So, someone, for example, if you posted something that was totally out of left field for you on LinkedIn, people would immediately think, well, that's not very like Michelle. Did she get hacked? Did something happen? So that branding is that consistency of like, I think we've probably all worked with that one person who's super high energy, super motivating toward everyone around them, very outgoing, very talkative. If they showed up at the office one day and they were angry and didn't talk to anyone and they were really down and you never saw them doing their office laps, you would worry about them. So it's the benefit of that is like making sure that you're showing up in a way that is conducive to your goals every single day. And if that's not where you are right now, starting to change your behavior in a way that is conducive to that so that you can achieve your goals long term.
That makes a lot of sense. And I guess I failed to really kind of talk about, I mentioned you're a copywriter, but
yes,
maybe it would be a good place to say, like, what is a copywriter? So they can kind of understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. So in short, a copywriter writes the words that sell. Oftentimes people think of writers as being, certainly, first of all, books, but also blogs, etc. I think the best way to describe a copywriter is to tell you what it's not. And that is to understand the difference between what is copy and what is content. So content is typically, the difference is that it's written for computers and that it tends to be longer form. And what I mean by it's written for computers is, let's say that you have a company blog and it's all about all the things that your company does. ultimately, the purpose of that blog is so that when people are searching how to X, Y, and Z, they find your blog, and that blog leads them towards your company. But it's written for computers because SEO, or the algorithm, is going to help them discover your company through that method. Copywriting is written for people instead of computers, and it's written to resonate with people and inspire action, which is typically a sale. All copy is content, but not all content is copy. So it's kind of a square rectangle situation. But as a copywriter, I write the words that sell specifically. So I don't do the long form, the blogs, etc. I write websites, email sequences, whether they be nurture or sales email sequences. Facebook ads are very common, landing pages, launch pages, etc. So I hope that provides a little bit of clarity for those who may not have known.
Yes, it's definitely a thorough and something that kind of correlates to my understanding. But so where does copy come into personal branding then?
It's so important. And again, when we think of branding, we think of like the image, the logos, Michelle has these fabulous pink glasses. Do you know the woman with the fabulous pink glasses, right? But when it comes to your brand outside of visuals, it's, again, how you're connecting with people. It's the words that you're using online. So if you want, it helps you take control of the narrative around who you are in personal branding. So an example of something that I do when I work with executive teams and we talk about personal branding and how that affects the rest of the company, is what are the words that you use to describe yourself? And I often give them the exercise to ask, 5 or 6 people to give them a couple of words that they would use to describe who they are in the workplace. And sometimes there's a difference and sometimes they're very much aligned. But when you know what the words are that are being used to describe you and describe your work, it allows you to be more consistent. And if what you think you're portraying is not what other people are receiving, it gives you the opportunity for alignment. So copy comes into personal branding when it's, how are your emails being sent? Copy is, again, it's your vibe. So does Michelle send very short, to the point, maybe almost abrasive emails, or is Michelle known for using way too many exclamation points because she's so lovely and so bubbly? So it's not only the words that you use to describe yourself, it's the words that other people use to describe you, and it's the words that you use and how you use them consistently to portray your image.
Great. And I can confirm that Michelle uses way too many exclamation points. So guilty there. So I think you talked a little bit about, how can someone in a corporate environment use personal branding? So what are your tips for creating that personal brand? Like if you want to be known for something specific, because I imagine a lot of our people have in mind, like how they want to be seen as a leader. How do you get started?
So I mentioned that simple exercise that's kind of a gut check of where are you and where do other people think that you are, asking for words, asking for that feedback, but also to sit down and think about, what are my values, and write down, maybe 4 to 5 of your core values and then define them. So, if your value is freedom, well, freedom might look different to you as it does to me, as it does to the person next to me. So really defining what those values are and then deciding how you're going to use those values to help you achieve your goals, whether your goals are your own, your company's, your team's, etc. So the baseline in personal branding is understanding what you want your brand to be. And what your brand currently is and what you want your brand to be might be totally different things. That doesn't mean that every person should go through some flamboyant rebrand of all of a sudden I want to be taken more seriously. I can tell you a cringy story. When I went to college, when I was younger, my hair was very light. And I have big curly hair. And when I went to college, I had this image of like what a college girl was. And I was like, I'm going to go and be an academic. So I dyed my hair dark brown and I got glasses and I started wearing different clothes. And it was just so off because it just wasn't who I was. Like I could go to college and be smart and not fit this like mold of what I thought that was in my mind. So I kind of rebranded myself, and it was not good because it wasn't in alignment with my values at all. And my values are to just be, completely myself. And I wasn't leaning into that. So it didn't feel right. So as far as tips go, understanding where you are, where you want to be, and finding out what you have to do to bridge that gap, and leaning on the people around you, because when people are aware of your effort, they see your effort. So yeah, I think that's always a good place to start.
Great. And I think that we kind of talked about this already, and I didn't know if you had any additional insight, but, you talked a little bit about how you envisioned what you wanted yourself to be because you were trying to fit into a mold of what you thought you should be. But are there any more is there any more guidance that you might have in trying to stay authentic to yourself when developing the personal brand?
Yeah, I mean, so in a workplace, if you're trying to elevate your title, say, a lot of people think that they need to start behaving like the person in that title. So say that you're in a VP role and you want to be the president of the company. You think you need to start acting like Joanne the president. But if Joanne the president is moving out of that role, it's because something new is needed. And it always pays to remember what your own strengths are and how you can amplify those. And good leadership is always helping elevate those around you. So leveraging the strengths of those around you too, to make sure that you're lifting as you climb, is an excellent sign of leadership. You don't have to go be Joanne the leader. You can be yourself the leader, and really leaning into your brand. And it sounds cheesy, like no one else has what you have and your unique value. But I mean, Adidas didn't wait for Nike to go under before Adidas became Adidas. And now we have Allbirds and we have Noble and we have, the Reebok CrossFit shoes. They all bring their own unique value proposition to the footwear world. We can all bring our unique value into our own brand and our own companies.
Yeah, I love that. And our last podcast, we had somebody on and we talked a little bit about golf. And a lot of times when you move into a certain level, the idea is that you need to learn golf to go out and network and socialize. And sometimes that just doesn't fit with who you are as a person. And I kind of liken that to this a little bit, in that you don't have to kind of change yourself to fit in. There are other ways to go about and be be authentic to who you are, and not have to kind of change yourself to fit in. So I like the idea of being authentic to who you are.
Yeah, and I think to echo what a point that I think you're making there is that we are allowed to change and learn and grow as we move through our careers. So, maybe golf doesn't sound fun now, but you take a couple lessons and now, your brand is someone who likes to try new things. It's not saying that everyone needs to go golfing. That's just the very niche example, but your brand changes too. Maybe when you were new in the workplace, you were the wild, feisty salesperson, and 20 years and some career elevation has turned you into, the more nurturing, quieter, calmer person, as we grow and evolve. So your brand is going to change. I think it's more about knowing who you are on the inside and where you want to go and acknowledging those changes.
Right. So you're saying it's okay to change your brand. So if you find that, where you were before fit, but you want to continue to grow, it's okay to kind of develop your brand as you continue to grow in your leadership role.
Yeah, because after a couple decades or years or however long, the perception is still going to be that you love to learn, you love to adapt, you love to change, and that may become your brand, is that you are very adaptable and malleable, and that you've become a Jill of all trades. And, so looking at your brand is also having strong hindsight.
Great. And I know social media is kind of something that's on everybody's minds, and how you portray yourself on social media. And so when you're working on creating your brand as a leader or in a corporate environment, is it important to stay consistent with that brand on social media?
A million people will tell you a million different things, I think, but is it important to stay consistent? Yes. However, there's different layers of people's brands. So there may be the Sally at work is one type of person, but Sally with her kids is totally different than Sally when she's playing rec league volleyball every Tuesday night. So I think, again, it comes down to knowing our values and living authentically to our values throughout every aspect of our life. But the folks who know Sally from volleyball league might know a totally different Sally than those who work with her every day. So when it comes to social media, if you have say a Twitter account and you're a financial advisor and you tweet all about financial things, you're helping people stay up to date with the markets, you are, fill in the blank there. But typically what I see people do with social media is they understand what their pillars are on social media. For example, I do not post really almost anything about my relationship on my social media because I don't really use social media for personal uses. So when I say pillars, it's like, let's go to that financial advisor example. They may post about the markets, they may post about trends. They're also super fun. So they might post some recent financial memes, and they might also be political and talk about, macroeconomics and the global sphere, so they might have their four kind of topics that they stick around, but they don't talk about like volleyball league or their kids or whatever. That said, if you have social media and that's where your friends are, and that's what you use social media for, is to interact with them and send memes and show off your kids and be really proud of the trophy that your volleyball league won, then absolutely use it for that. If you're in a high profile spot professionally, I just say keep those accounts private. Because when a company is hunting for a new VP of finance and they see that you're off gambling at the casino every weekend, they might not think that your values are aligning or something like that. So I think it's just the discernment on how you choose to use and how you choose to show up on social.
It's an interesting example. I really like that example. But I'm taking it back to what you said before. The important thing when you're developing your brand at work is to be authentic. And if you're authentic, if you're truly authentic with your personal, like who you are as a leader, it should really kind of work with your personal brands and how you kind of show up with your family or show up personally as well. And as you know, there shouldn't be any kind of jarring issues when you take a look at the social media, like, oh my God, I didn't, like, she's completely different on social media. I think that's so important.
Totally. And you can choose to not have social media. I think that's something that people do get caught up in when it comes to branding. It's like, you can choose not to have it, or you can choose to have one and not the others. You can choose to spend 20 minutes every morning scrolling on LinkedIn, reposting what's important, sharing your own thoughts, and then shut it off and never touch Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the other ones, TikTok, whatever else. So and that can be part of your brand too, is like that you're present when you're present, but you don't show up online, and that's okay.
It's so interesting. I'm starting to see a lot more trending towards that, where people are realizing that social media really shouldn't be the center of their lives, and they're really trying to get off of social media. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where that goes.
Mm-hmm. It will. It really will. I used to work closely with a CIO who played in like a very local band. Like it was him and his two buddies. They'd been doing it for like 2 years, and I was in a sales role, and I went to do some research about him and his company. And when I Googled his name, a YouTube video of his band came up, and it was totally fine. It was a cover band. They played at local bars, that outdoor fun vibe. But on one hand, it totally humanized him. I was like, wow, I love to go watch local music on Friday nights. This is something that we have in common. And he didn't do it for his brand. He did it for his band and to share what they were doing. But I think a couple of lessons there. One, Google yourself. And two, that you don't only have to be the working version of you at work. You're allowed to bring yourself into your brand.
I love that. I really love that. So if somebody is getting started and they're like, okay, I'm ready to develop my personal brand. I know I want to be a great leader, but I really don't know where to start. Like I'm starting with a blank sheet of paper. I know I can start thinking about what my values are, but maybe it's easier to find somebody to kind of start looking at and saying, okay, this is the person that I want to use an example for personal branding. What is the best way to find that example, that they can look to and make it a little easier to get started?
You're asking how people can find someone to emulate and follow?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Look at, this is going to be interesting. It kind of harkens back to social media, but look at who you're already following. You can, if you're seeing this on video, you can see my books behind me. Turn around and look at your bookshelf and tell me who you're already consuming their content. Because there's probably a lot of good examples in your followers list, on your bookshelf, in your Audible subscription, etc. So for me, I read all of Brene Brown's books. And there are aspects of her that I'm like, wow, that resonates with me. I would like to emulate that. And then take a look at what they are sharing. Is it motivational? And it's motivational to you, or motivational in a way that you think you could share it with your team and make an education pillar part of who you really want to be and a part of your brand that you value. And then what does that look like? Does that look like personal mentorships with folks in your office? Does that look like volunteering outside of the office? Does that look like, maybe that's just something that you share on LinkedIn a lot, is things that you've learned and lessons that you've taken from life. Probably the best example of personal branding that I can think of is Gary Vee, because Gary Vee is high energy. He's always kind of yelling at you. He's not afraid to be very straightforward with what he sees for people's areas of opportunity. But that's who he is. Those are his pillars. He does not show up online, on video, outside of his home, I'm sure, if he is in anything less than that high energy mood. So he's a good example too. And then, you look at what resonates with someone like him and what you can emulate and what feels supernatural and super on brand for yourself.
I'm not sure if you're okay with kind of sharing this, but I think what might be helpful before we kind of go off of personal branding and just go into general leadership is, can you maybe think of a time where you had a conversation with somebody who was working on developing their personal brand? Are there specific questions? I know you talked a little bit about them, but if you kind of just talk through, what are some of the very specific questions just to wrap up, like that you would ask to have them start thinking about their personal brand?
Yeah. The first things would be, what are your values and can you define them? An exercise that I found was really helpful for myself is you can go online and search like PDF list of values and print off, and it'll be fun, family, friendship, everything all in alphabetical order, and go through it and circle just at first all the ones that resonate with you. Maybe generous is your thing and fun is not, and go through and see which ones like really resonate with you, and then try to narrow that down to a list of 10, and then try again to narrow that down to a list of 5. And when you go through that repetition of writing down every single word, first of all, it's an incredibly healthy personal exercise of like, wow, I am fun. I am generous. I am zesty. I am adventurous. And then you go through and you realize kind of where the common threads are of like, I value adventure, but I also value freedom. Well, when we think about defining those to ourselves, what do they really mean? And what is the more core, all-encompassing value? And then when you get to take those top 5 and define them for yourself, you really find guidance in your own life. You give yourself those kind of boundaries and some direction, and it helps you look at opportunities and say, well, this isn't a value of mine. Maybe a mentorship opportunity comes up and you realize that's not in accordance with my values, and it's going to be an energy drain if I do that, and I would be doing my mentee a disservice. So I'm going to say no to that. And you create that boundary for yourself. And then it helps you adhere to that brand of maybe not that she's unhelpful, but that she gives other people opportunities where she knows that she's not going to shine. And it gives you that. So I say always start with values. And that's something that you can do. Take a half an hour and sit down and dedicate some time to it. And that's a huge starting point. I'm trying to think of other good examples. There's always going to be personal branding experts out there that can help. I know a few image experts, and if anyone listening to this wants to reach out and ask me for recommendations, I'm happy to. But sometimes who you are as a personality is just not shining through in the way that you're physically presenting yourself. And there's opportunities for improvement there that people can recognize. So, there's always going to be somebody that you can pay to help you, whether it's with your professional brand, professional personal brand, your physical branding, if you want to sit down and talk about copy. I am always willing to help, but I think that people can always do better when they sit down and have some honest time with themselves and their values as a starting point.
I love that. And I'm glad you brought up image. I know that's something that is not looked fondly at with social media, especially with work from home, and, very much like you should be able to just be in your pajamas and work as long as you're getting the work done. But I don't think it's appreciated how much, whether we like it or not, image and the way you come across and just looking, it doesn't need to be a suit and, makeup and, polished hair, but kind of looking professional can make a huge difference as if you're trying to like move up and be taken seriously. And I hate to say that because I know it's superficial, but I think image is always going to be important, whether we want it to be or not. So I appreciate that you brought that up.
Yeah. I always say you only get one first impression. Mm-hmm. And if that, coming to my own career in copy is, am I consistently getting emails from some jerk, or am I consistently getting emails from someone who, even though I have to do what they say, they still ask and they're wonderful about it. So if your first impression is in the emails, if it's in copy, if it's in the way that you present yourself on, your Teams or Slack or whatever, that's important. But also, if you're the person showing up on Zoom, and I know the pink glasses lady, I know her, even if I don't know what her title is, I know that she's always there and she's always smiling. right? Or is it that guy, he might be in an executive role, but he's always sitting so far back in his chair that you can only see the top of his head. And when you do see his face, he's clearly looking at his second screen. Like, that's a brand. And how you visually present yourself, even if you're never using words, is just, I would say, just as important as the way that you're using your words.
Right. Yeah. And so switching a little bit, I know we talked about mentorship. I was curious, is there a mentor to you that's been impactful or most impactful in your career? And what has that meant to you?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to have several. And the one that comes to mind first, I've actually not worked with him ever in a professional capacity. I met him when I was a student, and he was speaking at a conference. We struck up a conversation. Turns out we were in Seattle, but we were both living in Iowa at the time. So I reached out to him via email, and I was like, can I buy you coffee and just hear about your career and learn about your career? And from there, it turned into an incredible mentorship and friendship. And it was certainly informal. We never had mentor meetings. We never, any of that. I, have met a lot of the most important people in my life through him, or at events that I was invited to because I knew him. And it's a lift as you climb situation, because it's not like, oh, I knew him when he was a lowly intern. It's not like that at all. But as his career has expanded, and just having him in my network, and I would like to think that I've been incredibly beneficial to his network as well as I've grown. It's just been a really good symbiotic relationship, and I was able to get professional advice from him, but also there have been times in my life where he was like my rich uncle, and I go to him for personal finance advice. I ran into him once, and I was just going through a hard time, and he was like a very strong personal pillar for me. So it's a good example of how, especially because he's one of the first entrepreneurs that I ever knew well, he helped to guide me from not only through the beginnings of my professional career, but then also into entrepreneurship, and still be a professional pillar for me throughout my entrepreneurial journey.
That's amazing. I love hearing that stories of positive mentorship. I think it's hard sometimes to find that person that can really influence you in your career. And I love hearing when people actually find that person that has made a difference. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to hear, and maybe it's from this person, but what is the best leadership advice? I think, again, a lot of our audience are aspiring leaders, or they're new to leadership, and they're really trying to figure things out. So from your own personal experience, what is the best leadership advice that you've received that you can think of?
Not only the best advice I've received, but the best advice that I've seen in action is to always be learning. Mm-hmm. Leaders are always learning. Curiosity can be such an underrated but strong value when it comes to people leadership, people management, etc. If something isn't going a leader's way, they want to know why, not what they can do to change it. Leadership should never be an oppressive hand, and we can lead from any position. I personally find that I am the best leader when I have a leader to follow. Mm-hmm. I love to lead, kind of lead from within is something that I've really come to value. I moved into a management position at my previous company, and I was immediately like, no, I did have great leaders ahead of me, but I also realized that I loved being part of a team, and it's kind of that concept of it's lonely at the top, but being in a formal leadership position doesn't always mean that you're the best leader. I think but I guess going back to the original question is that curiosity or the propensity to learn, whether it's a hard skill or learn the reasoning behind people's decisions, is by far the best leadership advice I've gotten.
I love that. And so I think you kind of talked about this, but just curious if there's anything else. Like, what are the most important leadership qualities for new leaders that you believe to be the most important qualities for new leaders?
Again, curiosity, but also time management.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think leaders are, especially those who are excited to learn, forget how to say no. And there are many kind ways to say no, and probably the best way to say no is to tell them that it's not in their best interest for you to do that. I used the mentorship example. Sometimes you don't have the bandwidth for it, and you'd be doing someone a disservice if you did say yes to something. So I think probably those two things. Time management is a hard skill, and curiosity is a soft skill.
Yeah, I think time management is important. And I think one of the hard things for new leaders, and it's a challenge. I mean, how do you push back when you're getting pressure from above? And I know this is outside of what we're talking about here, but I think I was just talking about this recently. It was, how do you push back and say, okay, as a new leader, I need to look out for my team and what my team can manage successfully, and putting that burden onto them. Something has to give, and having the bravery to be able to speak up and say, okay, what are the priorities? If this is the priority now, how do I, one, manage the other priorities, or two, how can I get the resources to really make this a success? And I think part of being a new leader is just, it's the difficulty in knowing that you can ask those questions and not just be yes, yes, yes. And I think that really leads to distrust from your team when you start to overcommit them. So I like that.
Yeah, 100%. Not only when you overcommit them, but when you overcommit yourself, you're not going to be able to serve as, I mean, from your highest space, or from being able to do the best by your team, by yourself. And that does bleed over to doing your best by your family, by your personal health, all of it. Yeah.
So in your leadership career, what would you say has been the biggest challenge you've either when you were in corporate or even launching your business? What would you say was the biggest challenge for you as a leader, particularly?
Wow, that's a good question. Biggest challenges, I think, when I first started in my corporate career, I think I struggled to see the bigger picture, and I was very self-serving in that. I wanted to make more. I wanted to be in the next role. Again, I was in sales, so the organizations that I was a part of were very fast moving, and I was used to being the fastest, the best, whatever. And it was very self-serving. It wasn't about my clients. It wasn't about best serving my team or my company. And that's something that I really took with me into entrepreneurship, is that I seek to serve so much more than I sell, to the point where even though I write other people's sales materials, I rarely sell my services, because people see what I do and they can come to me and be like, what does this look like for you to do this for me? So that was probably the biggest lesson, and why I wasn't accelerating as fast as I had hoped to at first in my corporate career, was because I was lacking maturity in that area. And it's been not only my biggest challenge in the past, but my biggest benefit now, is that I absolutely love doing what I do. And I do a lot of work like free of charge, or as examples, or I just get out and help people understand where they can do better. And then that just leads to that natural sales, I guess, for me, but it comes from caring more about other people and how I can do better by them, rather than how I can do better by myself.
Thank you. I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing that with us. And it is definitely an important, particularly as new leaders, to move beyond and think about, okay, it's not about you. It's about your clients. It's about your team and how you can support them and really reach the goals. Because you need everybody to be on board to succeed. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I think it really came from, and again, just being vulnerable, is it came from not wanting to be a statistic. I think still only 5% of CEOs of the largest companies in America are women. That certainly wasn't any different back when I graduated. And I was like, well, the faster I get through the bottom, the faster I get to the top. And I was like, I'm going to be a CEO. I'm going to be, I'm going to defy the statistics and the stereotypes. And that's really what it was for personal recognition. And it's just funny that like how quickly I realized that it wasn't serving me to be self-serving. But I think it was born from this like defiance of like, I need to be better. I'm not going to be just another woman who,
Yeah, I completely understand. So I know we only have a little bit of time left. And one of the things that I like to do is to provide kind of helpful tips on just being able to succeed day to day. And so I'd love to hear just generally, is there something that you do every day regularly that you feel attributes to your well-being?
Yeah. So I think we might have not talked about this at the very beginning, but Nomad Copy Agency comes from me being a nomad. I do not have a physical address. I spend a lot of time in one place, but I also spend a lot of time in other places. So it's super important to me to feel grounded every day and every night. So I actually travel with my memory foam pillow. I'm not a carry-on only girl. But that way I get to at least sleep in somewhat of the same place every night, whether that's at home, in a hotel, in an Airbnb, wherever. I also travel with a very thin yoga mat, and I spend at least, even if it's 3 to 5 minutes, just taking a breath every day. Then no matter where I am in the world, I can come back to myself and my body and ground myself there. And then the other thing is just drink a ton of water. I've always got my water bottle within reach. And that helps, keep me well and keep me on some sort of routine.
Yeah, I can appreciate the pillow. We were talking before we got on here a little bit about, I'm in a hotel room right now, and I can say the pillow last night led to, I have that Aura Ring tracker, and you can see how you sleep. And it was in light sleep all night, and I can appreciate your idea of traveling with a pillow because it can make such a difference.
It does. It really does.
And so one of the other things is with Boss Track, we have a Boss Track playlist, and we like to build playlists on Spotify that really inspire confidence and really get women in a position where their blood is flowing, they're ready to take on the day, they can build their confidence. I'm curious whether you have a song that really gets you moving, pumps you up, gives you confidence for the day if you're kind of feeling a little down, that works for you.
Yeah, my go-to song is Fat Bottom Girls by Queen. It's got the beat, it's got the lyrics. I just love it. That's my go-to song. You can't be sad listening to Fat Bottom Girls.
You can't. Oh my gosh, I have not heard that one yet. But I appreciate it. I love Queen. That's a great one. And then in terms of books and podcasts, is there anything that you would recommend that our readers listen to or read that would really help them in personal branding, in leadership in general, just something that might be valuable to them in their career?
Yes. There is a podcast called Build a Bigger Life. It is by Adam Carroll. And His slogan is build a bigger life, not a bigger lifestyle. And it's rooted in personal finance, but it's also rooted in actually arranging your life and your finances to a place that brings joy. And he, throughout it, I think he does a few solo casts, but he interviews individuals who are truly building a bigger life for themselves, and how they got to that point. And it's just incredibly inspiring. Some people want to be the CEO of a business. Some people want to be the CEO of their family. Some people don't want that at all. And they just want to go travel the world and, make it by. And that's truly what aligns with their values. So 100% recommend that podcast. It's called Build a Bigger Life by Adam Carroll. And he is the person that I mentioned earlier that has been probably the most influential mentor in my life. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I have not actually heard of that podcast. I'm going to have to go check that out myself. So thank you. Thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I think that wraps everything up. I'd like to really end by kind of giving you the opportunity to, one, kind of talk about anything you feel like you might have missed or you want to kind of clarify, or two, just to really share, how can our listeners reach out to you? Is it email, social media, website, just anything you'd like to share with them?
Yeah, so I know that it'll be in the show notes. So if anybody does want to reach out, I'm always happy to talk about copy. I do offer a free review of opt-in copy and email sequences. If that's something you're interested in, email me about it, go to my website, or I'm most active on Instagram at nomad.copy. Even if you don't want that, I'm always happy to chat and interact. Send me a message, send me a screenshot, whatever you do, at nomad.copy.
Great. And also, I guess if anybody's interested in learning more about the nomad life and working from multiple places, I mean, I just imagine that that's something even more importantly coming up in people's lives now, and really taking that opportunity to travel and see the world.
Totally. And the folks that I see doing it the most now versus 5 years ago. 5 years ago, it used to be recent college grads or like people under 30, the like, until your grandma convinces you should settle down and find a nice boy, right? That the people I see doing it the most right now are single women 50 plus. I am seeing so many, or couples that are 50 plus. One of them's retired, the other one's not, or the other one might have been a stay-at-home parent or something. But I am seeing, I lived in Mexico for 8 months last year, and I met so many people who were like, yeah, the second our kids went to college, we got out. Like we're here now, and they're stoked about it. And I think part of it is the remote work culture. I think part of it is, I think when we were younger, maybe retirement age seemed older. And now, these 50, 60-year-olds are retiring and, really living their best lives. And it's really great to see. This year, I've lived in Cape Town for 2 months, Cape Town, South Africa. I have a lot of friends who spend a lot of time in Bali. And if anybody wants to have that conversation, you can tell I'm ready to go on that one. But if anybody wants to talk about the digital nomad lifestyle, I'm here for it.
Well, thank you, Samantha. I really appreciate your time. And we might have to invite you back to talk specifically about the nomad lifestyle. I would love that. I think we could talk so much about that. But yeah, and I appreciate your time. And we're so happy to have you on. And I appreciate all of the valuable advice that you've given. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Michelle. Take care.
Hi, everyone. This is Michelle again. Just one more thing before you take off. If you've enjoyed this podcast, consider joining our Patreon at patreon.com/BossTrack, or sign up for our free weekly newsletter. It's easy to sign up and easy to cancel. Every Monday, we send out a short, exclusive newsletter of what we found during the week that we're excited about, we're inspired by, and we're watching and reading. If you'd like to check it out, just to go to thebosstrack.com/newsletter. Just type that into your browser, thebosstrack.com/newsletter. Drop in your email and you'll get the very next one. Thanks for listening.